Welcome back. You're watching Daybreak on Citizen Television. Thank you for staying with us. We are with Hussein Khalid, who is the Executive Director, Haki Africa, which is a lobby group for human rights in the country. Demias Kiprono is the Programs Manager, Amnesty International Kenya, and Francis Maina is a security analyst.
And of course, we are talking about the new dispensation at the security organ of the country. We know that we have a new DCI, and of course, there is a lot that has happened in the last few days, and we were just talking about that in studio, including the trends that have been picked up when it comes to the extrajudicial killings and unexplained disappearances of persons in the country and what needs to be done. But before we continue, here is what the nominee for Interior had to say yesterday.
Yes, Professor Kithure Kindiki, when he appeared before the Parliamentary Committee on Appointments chaired by the House Speaker Moses Masika Wetangula on how he seeks or how he looks forward to addressing extrajudicial killings in the country and cases of enforced disappearances. This coming just less than a week after President William Ruto in the county of Kericho called for the disbandment of the Special Survey Unit of the Directorate of Criminal Investigations.
As soon as I take office, the number one assignment is to ensure we set free this country from criminals, from bandits, terrorists, and cattle rustlers, not through press conferences. We will speak less because security does not require speaking. But I also want to assure the nation, the Honorable Chairman, we will follow the law. We will respect the Constitution. We will respect all the international human rights and humanitarian treaties that are part of the law of Kenya. But we will still do the job because in some of the most secure countries, ruthlessness with criminals is matched with the respect for human rights. So law-abiding citizens don't have anything to fear. There will be no extrajudicial killings. There will be no abuse of human rights. But we will do to criminals what needs to be done for them under both national and international law.
All right, Dimas, and I come to you. How are you receiving this affirmation and an assurance from the Interior Cabinet Secretary nominee, Professor Kithure Kindiki?
It is like music to my ears. He is a human rights lawyer, and we will take him to task to ensure that he abides by his promises. Those are very encouraging words. As I said before, the use of force should only be used when necessary, and it should be used in an accountable manner, and it should be proportionate. We cannot fight crime by acting like criminals. And so what the nominee for Interior has said is very encouraging. We have come from a history that has been quite brutal, especially when you are perceived to be threatening the regime, right? So there are three arenas of extrajudicial killings usually. The fight against terrorism, the fight against organized crime, the fight against crime in communities, and then political related extrajudicial killings. This is wide, and it touches on issues including the right to protest, where we have always noticed a spike in extrajudicial killings during political seasons or during seasons where there's high public order activity. So during the COVID pandemic, we saw the killing of Yasin Moyo, a young boy. We saw the killing of an ex-police officer and many other people in ways that indicate that the officers who were involved really did not think that they could suffer any consequences. Be that as it may, over the past decade, especially after the new constitution, we have seen a move towards accountability. I cannot lie that the police have not changed. There has been some change within the police, but what we are fighting is this rogue element that creates officers who are officially or unofficially given powers to act as they wish because they know that they have the backing of the state.
Okay.
And
Hussein,
the state is made up of Kenyans and is put there by Kenyans, and it should represent our interests.
Okay. Hussein, I come to you because the epicenter of this discussion is a key ingredient, and that's the Kenya Police Service. The Waki Commission, after the 2007-8 post-election skirmishes, when the ugly spectre engulfed the country, showed the extent to which the police were suspected of serious human rights violations during the 2007-8 post-election violence, where 1 in every 3, that's 1 of 3, of 1,133 deaths documented by the commission that looked into the matter was a result of wounds. And that's according to Professor Philip Alston, the new and special rapporteur on extrajudicial killings. Then there's Professor Abraham Kithure Kindiki, if nominated, making lofty ambitions to address another pertinent matter more than 15 years later. Are these assurances enough? And beyond the pledges, how committed should the government be in protecting lives?
Yeah, as Dimas has stated, the words from the nominee are encouraging. And I think at this point in time, as a country, we need someone with a good grounding in law to take charge of the interior docket. Because what we've seen over the years is blatant abuse of the law by the interior docket, even to an extent where they would ignore court rulings. Even when they're asked to go there, you heard sometimes they would say, we can't spend all our time going to court, you know? So to have someone of Professor Kithure Kindiki's caliber taking over the interior docket is something that we look forward to, because we are trusting that as a professor of law, he will ensure that the law is followed to the letter. But, you know, looking back over the years, and you've made very good reference to Professor Alston's report, there's a history in this country where the police service, or now, you know, formerly the police force, have operated above the law. And, you know, there's some sense of impunity exhibited, you know, saying nothing can happen to them. I remember the current DCI, when he was at IAU, we investigated a case 2 years back in Kwale, where it is reported that probably the SSU, because that's how they operate, killed a 3-year-old child, shot in the head, a 6-year-old boy, the brother, shot in the head, a mother who was 7 months pregnant was shot in her stomach, the fetus died, and the father was also killed. To date, this day as we speak, despite giving all the evidence and all the information, no action has been taken. That is the level of impunity exhibited, you know, over the years with this unit. And we are feeling, I mean, for us as human rights practitioners, we are saying, we don't condone by any means crime. We don't condone terrorism. These acts in themselves are human rights violations of the highest order. So we don't condone that. And we want the security apparatus to fight crime, to fight terrorism. But please, let us do that within the confines of the law. There's a reason why we have a constitution. There's a reason why we have laws in this country. There's a reason why Article 3 says we must respect the international, you know, instruments that we have, you know, signed on to. And because if we do that, then we are able to live harmoniously. Law makes us equal. But the problem is that over and again, governments have instilled fear on people, you know, so that we give up our liberty. And you hear people saying, it's okay, let them be killed because they're criminals. But Benjamin Franklin, I think it was, who once said, any society that gives up a little liberty for a little security will eventually lose both.
Okay.
All right. And to borrow...
Now, before you go to the next of all, I would like to state very clearly, we have been trying to talk about terrorism and what have you. If you go from here up to Kitale, from there you see even women going to fetch water with an AK-47, up to Turkana, going all the way from Marsabit. And when people kill each other on cattle hosting, you hear it is Pokot, it is Elgeyo Marakwet. If there is no law on guns, then we should have our parliament have laws that protect Kenyans against illegal weapons. Because here in Nairobi, if you are arrested with a gun, it is a serious criminal offense. But because the people on these areas, they do cattle roasting for people who have the muscles within the system, you get young people, high school students, walking freely with a full-loaded magazine of 30 bullets and an AK-47. They steal heads of cattle at night, and they go to school in the morning. So my question is, even to Professor Kithure Kindiki, let us have the law as our guardian and our protector. If you have a gun like the guy who shot Mama Aida's bodyguard in Kisumu, he was arrested in Eldoret. The whole system was looking for him. He had only one pistol. But if you go to Pokot, Turkana, you get a family has about 10 AK-47. If you come to the place that I'm born in, Nyeri, and you are known to have one bullet, the flying squad, the special units, you'll be in your house. So what I'm saying is, there are people who are supposed to obey the rule of law, and others because they have an economic investment, like trading on cattle rustling and what have you. You know, they don't obey the rule of law. I would ask my very dear friend, Professor Kithure Kindiki, if there are no good laws on weapons,
yes,
let's have them. If it is cattle rustling, have you ever had one person from Pokot, Elgeyo Marakwet, Baringo East, Tiaty, taken to court, or even Maralal, Samburu, on cattle rustling?
Okay.
So these are my points.
Okay.
I want us to get into another part of this conversation. I want to talk about, just trace the journey of the Independent Policing Oversight Authority, the genesis of it, and how it has worked in terms of part of the reforms that were introduced in the National Police Service. You know, one of the things that was expected of this institution was that it was going to review and audit police investigations, as well as coordinate other institutions on issues of police oversight, among other things. Also, to receive and initiate investigations into complaints of police misconduct, among other things. I mean, there was that promise that it was supposed to fix some of the issues that you gentlemen are raising on the table this morning. Several years down the line, has it lived to that expectation? Your body language is telling Hussein. I want to start with you. I mean,
yeah, I think looking at the history as a nation, our human rights track record is very checkered. And that's why even in the Constitution, when you know, the makers of the Constitution gave us a draft, the Bill of Rights was the biggest chapter in that Constitution. Because where we come from, human rights have been blatantly abused, whether it's you know, the Kenyatta regime, the Moi regime, Kibaki, until you know, we go to the Constitution. We had that history. And if you look at that history, the human rights abuses, majority of those abuses were committed by the security agencies. They were the ones behind most of the atrocities. That is why, you know, it was suggested that we need an independent body that would be able to investigate, to prosecute, and to find out what is really happening within the police service because of their history. Now, the jury, I guess, is still out there.
Okay.
But one thing for a fact we know is that the IPOA, the initial team that we had, set the stage very clearly, you know, to address human rights violations. But we saw how they were, for example, denied resources to do their work. They were not given the opportunity to engage fully. At times, even when they visited the police stations, they were stopped, you know. They did not get the necessary support needed for them to be able to do their work. Unfortunately, that has also carried on with the current regime, with the current chairperson. And, you know, the support that they require to fully implement their work is not there.
Is the support, are you basing it on financial?
Well, there's financial resources, of course, human resources, but it starts with financial resources. Okay. Because if you have financial resources, then you can hire the necessary investigators, you can hire anything and everyone that you need.
Okay,
so
but just hang on, Khalid.
Yes.
When you talk about finances, let's take a look at the numbers in terms of the mathematics, and this is the foundation in terms of the finances. 2012-13, 96 million Kenya shillings. 2018-19, that is the budget, no, 2017-18, I beg your pardon, from 96 to 800 million Kenya shillings. 18-19, then it went up. I mean, there has been a budgetary increase for IPOA, and it had received more than 10,000 cases of police misconduct, but only a minutiae of that was successfully convicted in a court of law. Why? Very true. Why do you think?
I think their record of conviction in courts is definitely not what we can say satisfactory. They need to do more. But even looking at those figures, if you look at the entire country and the number of cases that they have, those resources, yes, they are able to do something, but not satisfactorily. We've sat down with the commission over the years, and they've repeatedly told us some of these issues that we need to lobby for them. But that is not to excuse them from not delivering. The cases, if you look, I think the success rate was something around 20%, if I'm not wrong. Mm-hmm. By any means, that is not something you expect from an institution such as IPOA, where many people, if you look at the country, the issues, the human rights that we are experiencing, human rights violations we're experiencing, you expect more from them. But I'm saying, for me, it's a work in progress, and we hope that through Kithure Kindiki, the professor, and the new regime that has owned up to extrajudicial killings, that they will allow this unit to operate, one, without interference, and two, with the resources that they need so that they can deliver on their mandate.
Francis, I know you have something to add on this. I mean, I also want you to add on to what I asked. I mean, other than the Independent Police Investigative Directorate in South Africa, there is no other such institution in Africa. This was a big milestone for the country, but are we reaping the benefits?
No, we were expecting to have a good rapport with the IPOA, but as we went, money in IPOA became an issue. And most of the police suspect, in the cases which police have been taken to IPOA, you get them diminishing because of their money muscle. If let's say it's like traffic officers, they raise their own money, they make sure that case doesn't go anywhere. If it's like, the other OCS, one of the OCS is there, they are able to fight the cases against the civilians. But to me, I would recommend on IPOA should have their own prosecutors, not waiting for, because when that case is investigated, taken to DPP, they watch their hands. Between IPOA and DPP, anybody can go in between. But if IPOA had their own prosecutors, special agents, take these officers to court, I think we should have a lot of grip on prosecuting rogue police officers. The reason why I'm saying this, go to every police station in this town, or in this country, like Mount Kenya. Illicit alcohol is being sold everywhere. The police, they know, the chiefs, they know, the sub-chiefs, they know. Everybody in the provincial administration knows. He's just the cover-up. It has destroyed the economic structure of the Mount Kenya region. You can't leave your pet or even your sheep in the house because it will be stolen by your young son and sold for alcohol. But the chief knows who is selling. And he has no regard. I mean, he's not paid taxes, he's not legitimate, but they eat from the same level. You go to Kariobangi, light industries, people are manufacturing any chemical that can kill anybody. The provincial administration, the police officers, they go around with their mahindras and their land cruisers every day collecting extortion fee from all the wines and spirits. That's something Professor Kithure Kindiki needs to put on his feet. Because we cannot have police officers, instead of putting the law and order of this country, protecting the lives and the property, they are the ones extorting. If you don't pay, you get arrested today, tomorrow, until you close your business. People are closing their wines and spirit in this Nairobi or in this country because you have to pay a bribe every day, like 200 shillings. Mm-hmm. So I think there is more that can meet the eye on the docket of Professor Kithure Kindiki. He is very committed and he is very honest, but he is going into a quagmire of greed, corruption, murder, people who just can kill if there is no money. So I think he needs to sit down with professionals, people like Haki Africa, get the notes, compare them, get from the new director of DCI. Let us investigate all these officers who are in these special units and know because some are very wealthy. It is not even the SSU, the Lands Fraud Department. The officers there, they pay money to be put in that department because when they are transacting your land, they can be against you, as you said, the owner of this land,
okay,
against the perpetrator who is coming to take your land.
All right.
He gets 10 million, and then your title is cancelled, and you are the original owner. There's so much suffering in the DCI and the police force in general.
Francis. Now, Dimas, your perspective on the same as well. So how then do we restructure IPO? How then do we make it work for us? From where you sit, what is it that you'd envision as part of the reforms that now that President William Ruto has taken over and it seems like there is goodwill to change things here and there, what is it that you'd expect to see us change that will bring solutions to what we are discussing?
So last year in February, there were 15 officers who were to be charged with invading a household in Busia and beating people up in the name of COVID enforcement. They even threw tear gas into the house and they wreaked havoc. IPO conducted investigations. We were told that charges were going to be preferred. In fact, some of us went to court, and on that day, the charges were withdrawn. And then I take you back to 2017. After all had happened, you remember there was a lot of extrajudicial killings. Kenya National Commission on Human Rights recorded about 204 forms of sexual violence against women. So there was widespread violations that was attributed to the police, right? But in December that year, the president thanked the police for a job well done. And I'm trying to tie in the issue of political will. IPO needs to be supported, and every formation within the police should know that now the president is supporting IPO's work, that Kenyans cannot suffer under unlawful policing. The people who are supposed to protect you are not the ones who are now hurting you. And if that political will is there, then I think IPO's work will be more effective. Because we can have the laws, we can have the finances, but as long as the system is hell-bent on it not working, then it all becomes in vain.
Mm-hmm. Hussein, let's talk about the journey to getting justice. Mm-hmm. For such cases, what are the complexities that we're looking at? Because some of these cases have taken so long in court. Yeah. Majority of them are thrown out for lack of evidence or for one reason or the other. What is happening?
I will, reiterate what Dimas has stated. The lack of political will. Mm-hmm. In many of these cases, for example, just look at the case of the Ethiopian, Samson Tekle Michael, who was picked in broad daylight in front of onlookers with the video cameras. We saw the vehicle that picked him. We have the faces of the individuals that picked him. They forced him out of his vehicle, put him into another vehicle and left. We have followed up that case because we have cameras all over that area. So if the police had the resolve, if the police wanted to confirm where this individual is, they would very easily do that. But you find there are a lot of, innuendos and issues. You go to the DCI, they tell you stories. You go to the NIS, they tell you stories, because simply there is no political will to address some of these issues. And for us, the words of the president, his remarks that this unit has been committing extrajudicial killings and disappearances, as he said, is music to our ears, because for years we have the right institutions, we have the right laws, we have the right policies to be able to address these issues. But every time you followed up, at the end of the day, you'll get to hear, now this one, you need to talk to so-and-so. I don't need to talk to anyone, any individual. The law should be clear. You're supposed to do your job. But it gets to a certain level when you're following up, for example, the Ethiopian. You get to a level where you're told, now here, you need to go and see some politician somewhere, some senior politician. So as Dimas has said, for us, the president's remarks, and we expect this to continue, to say that he supports institutions to do their work, that he does not condone extrajudicial killings, and all the top people for them to say the same thing, so that the message is clear to the junior officers, to the boots on the ground, that look, the leadership that we have presently does not support using excessive force. That if I do that, then I'm on my own. That there will be no impunity. There will be no one to protect me. If that message goes out clearly, I believe we will truly have a police service, because up to this point in time, it's still a police force. If there are killings, if there are disappearances, it's still a police force. But when we will be able to send a message to all the security authorities that you are accountable as an individual officer, and if you break the law, you will be, prosecuted for it, then I think we will be able to realize the change that you're asking for, for Kenya to move forward.
Okay.
And just,
yes, Demis.
Just to
Francis,
add,
I'll come to you. Yes, Angon. Yes, Demis.
Just to add, let's look at the Willy Kimani case. So there's this lawyer, his client, who had filed a complaint against a police officer and the driver, the taxi driver at that time. They were killed. Where were they found? They were found in a river. Surprise? That case has taken about 6 years. During the case, we realized that some officers in that case are involved in other killings. These are not members of SSU. This is a police station in a certain corner of in the outskirts of Nairobi. That case, if you analyze it carefully, it shows you the challenges. First of all, we could see the father in court every time. And because Willy Kimani perhaps was a lawyer, there was that support from the Law Society of Kenya. But usually these families find themselves alone, right? And you're sitting opposite a police officer, most of them who are usually given bail or bond, and you're following justice. Cases are adjourned many times. Judges are transferred. And so that case is illustrative of that problem with access to justice. Another thing with...
you mean the justice system?
The justice system itself.
The third arm of the government?
Yes.
Yes, go ahead, please.
Another problem is that there are other players that usually come in. There's witness protection. But witness protection usually comes in when the matter is already in court. But with police killings, witnesses have to be protected immediately. They have to be taken out of that community. They have to be secured immediately. So the witness protection framework that we have should be changed. I don't know whether that's I don't know whether we need an amendment to the law, but witness protection should kick in earlier. We also have other laws like the National Coroner Service Act, which has been passed but not implemented. Okay. That law helps in preservation of evidence. The coroners, for example, in the Yala issue, would have helped us establish a pattern already. How are these people being killed? Why are most people being strangled, for example? Why do they have injuries in certain places? And it would help us move towards accountability in terms of seeing, because people who do these things have patterns, right? We know that
there's a common script.
Yeah, there's a common script. If you are not found in the jungle, you are found in a river.
Yeah. Now, what I would like to support my brother is, like Wakili Kimani and Mwenda and the driver. It's very heartbreaking. If I tell you, after my own intelligence collection, these people, they were killed because of 50 shillings. That police officer, the one the man, was asking the border drivers, the border riders every day. Every border was to pay him 50 shillings. So you can imagine a full legal officer died because of 15 shillings, because it was 50 bob divided by 3, 15 shillings each. So you can see the lot in our police that they don't respect any rule of law. All these Kenyans you see in this town who operate small businesses, matatus, Ubers and the rest, you must pay protection fee. The city council in this town, they even have apps to apply for your Uber. When you come in, they send one person who is in civilian like me. Then you get other 2 kanjo in uniform comes in. They want 5,000 from you.
So it's a setup.
It's a setup. Okay. So you see the whole process, and it is started, I have always said, when you rate the traffic police officer, put a roadblock and correct money openly the whole day. The other police officers say, if there is a turn to eat on them, even as we must look for ways to go and eat. So you get police officers harassing citizens, your license is not fair, is you what, we are multi-agency, you know, everything. If you do your research on news on Citizen, how business community are harassed by police officers, city council, everybody. I mean, it is so painful that as we speak, we need a thorough cleaning on the issue of police officers, you know, trying to intimidate Kenyans to pay bribes. Because it is not people want to pay bribes, but you are put into a corner. You go to the DCIO, he tells you to go back there. You go to the OCS, he tells you go back to the IO investigating officer. You go to the IO, he tells you go and speak with the person who you are brought to court, because he has already eaten on the other side of the person who, like most of the ladies on even domestic violence, they can't get out of their husbands, their ex-boyfriend or their ex-husbands, because you go to police stations. If your ex-husband or your estranged husband has money, he splashes money, and you go to a police station and you can't go anywhere. Okay. Ladies are frustrated also. It is a serious issue.
Okay. Hussein, allow me to come to you, and my colleague Safin will be touching on the recommendations that you made in the report to the different state organs and how we can then, going forward, have a system that caters for the lives of the Kenyan people. And Damien raised a very pertinent matter, and this is in relation to the now dispensed matter by the court in finding guilty Frederick Laliman and others who were accused of killing lawyer Willy Kimani, his client, and taxi driver Joseph Muiruri. But 3 years ago, Emeritus David Kenani Maraga, during the Anticorruption Summit at the Bomas of Kenya, said, look, if you bring us cases that are not watertight, then it wouldn't take us time before we throw them out. I mean, paint for us the larger picture of the criminal justice system. And hear this from Kuria Obadia, who is a senior DCI officer handling the matter that was then facing now Deputy President and former Madeira Member of Parliament Rigathi Gachagua. He said, and I quote him verbatim, "The investigation team I headed at the DCI was given strict and fixed timelines to come up with findings promptly, which made it difficult to conduct thorough investigations into the allegations against Rigathi Gachagua." There seems to be forces that are operating, and yet this is a government that's supposed to be operating within the confines of the law. Clearly, there needs to be something to be done, isn't it?
Very true. And I totally agree with your sentiments. Sometimes some of these processes are, tweaked to suit certain interests. As an investigating officer, before you even take up a matter, because that means you have credible evidence, the initial, what we call the prima facie evidence, the ones that you have, excuse me, as you start up the matter. When you're investigating, you should be able to collect enough evidence. And I agree. I mean, if you're in court and the evidence presented before you as a judge or a magistrate is one that cannot hold water, you have no choice but to dismiss that case. And for many years now, we have been blaming the judiciary. But then besides the judiciary, we also have to ask ourselves as citizens, what role do we play? Because in most cases, you'll find that there are private persons who actually are supposed to come and give testimonies or give evidence. Even when you look at, common crime within our communities, you'll find that a lady will rush to the police station to say, my handbag has been snatched and so on and so forth, or my phone has been grabbed by youth. When the police go out and they arrest these individuals, then you are required to record a statement. You're required to go to court. You'll find in most cases we shy away from that. You don't want to, follow through to make sure that you play your part. So as citizens, whether it's the case before politicians or others, there's someone somewhere, either an individual or a private firm, that is supposed to give out information. But it is these individuals sometimes who are approached. You'll find that they withdraw from the matter, and then you leave the police hanging. Because if we are not there to support the case, if you're not there to give evidence, then the police will not be able to push that matter through to the courts. And if the courts cannot have substantive evidence that they can use to convict, then they will automatically dismiss that case. But like I said, That is one side where the community, the people, us now, we can play a role in addressing some of these cases. But then we also know that at times, these investigators are somehow influenced. Whether it's money, we need to talk about the police service, the remuneration that they receive. If I am earning 50,000 and someone offers me 500,000. I think there was a case the other day of a police officer who was asked to explain, I think he had, was it 80 million shillings?
Yeah.
And he's just a normal traffic officer. So if you are poorly remunerated and some politician or some corrupt person or some criminal or a drug a dealer comes and says, look, here is 500,000 or 5 million, just look aside. Don't push this thing through. These are all issues, as Dima said. It's the entire justice system that we need to review, because one arm plays into another and another and another.
All right, and I'll just speak it on that note. Quite a number of recommendations that that umbrella body of organizations made, the missing voices, yeah? And one that touches on the National Police Service, 3 key recommendations, which include that they should ensure documentation in the occurrence book indicates all persons in police custody to facilitate investigations of enforced disappearances. They should also properly identify themselves in their regalia, have identification badges, and drive in police vehicles. But one that really interests me, and I want us to talk about this, and I'll bring you on this, provide adequate medical cover, including psychological and mental health support to officers and families of police officers. Why is this important?
So, first of all, policing and police are the biggest manifestation of the state. You probably always meet a police officer when you're walking around, you see them in traffic. So they are representatives of the state that you see everywhere. And their nature of work by itself needs them to deal with psychological trauma. For example, when someone is assaulted, when someone is killed, they are the ones who are supposed to internalize what is happening, record it for purposes of evidence. They are also sort of our psychologists because they deal with domestic issues. So whenever there's a conflict between members of the public, they find themselves in between that situation. They sometimes are the ones who are picking up bodies after road accidents, after massacres. So they see a lot in their day-to-day operations. Apart from that, their working hours are quite strenuous. Some work in far-flung areas. And the command structure is one that it needs strength. It's not like other areas of employment where you can be vulnerable to your boss. By the very nature of being a police officer, you need to be reliable in terms of tough situations. And so the National Police Service Commission and the National Police Service has not really been very aware of how to deal with psychosocial issues that the police face. We have seen the rise in number of police suicides and police murder-suicides, where an officer kills themselves and kills another one or kills their family. This has been happening almost every month. And I remember the beginning of last year, by the end of January, there are about 10 cases. And I know that there are programs right now in the National Police Service and the National Police Service Commission that have started to create spaces for people to talk and share, and perhaps for superiors to be able to know that there's a problem with my officer that maybe we can do, and to facilitate counselors. Okay. The problem is that the one that I saw in my analysis is that that framework has been placed under chaplaincy, right? So it has been placed under the religious arena of things, and it's not really health. These are mental health issues, they're not really spiritual issues. And so perhaps more discussion on that.
Right.
Right. Now, by coming in on my recommendations on the way forward on how we can sort out the issue of, these killings and these serious human rights violations, I would recommend we go into the issue of one. We need to have a drug enforcement agency so that we get the police officers from dealing with drugs, because they do it as a side hustle. We have a department whether it will be under the Department of Justice, that's the AG, that deals with drugs, because our biggest threat in this country is drugs. Then we also need to have the American law like FISA laws, which gives the powers for very confidential judges to indict you and give you an arresting warrant. You can be detained for a year being investigated on serious crimes like drugs, on terrorism, so that we stop, because also once you are arrested, these cases, they end up not going anywhere. Look at Jomo Kenyatta International Airport the other day. They are police officers. A lady was arrested a passenger was arrested in Bora International Airport, Addis Ababa, which is lower than us, with 1.7 billion worth of cocaine. The other one was arrested in India. If you look at our airport and you get your feelers on the intelligence, it's a part of security. Okay. Our airport, Nairobi Jomo Kenyatta International Airport, is falling down because everybody there is greed of getting money. They don't care about crime. We need to streamline our activity within our security docket so that Professor Kithure Kindiki follows the law, protects the common people and the property, and also protects the suspects, because they have a right to be protected until they are found guilty.
Innocent until proven guilty. All right, Hussein, your recommendations, key recommendations, there are so many for the Director of DPP, the Attorney General, the Judiciary. What is it that stands out for you? What should be done going forward?
I think the issue that Dimas addressed, mental health for police officers, is extremely important. And mental health can be looked at broadly to include their welfare, remuneration, medical care. You know, police live in very difficult environments. You have a family, two families sharing one room, and you just have, a curtain in between. We have to address these issues, and it's very, very important. The police have to be encouraged. This is a thankless job. We know that, and we feel their pain sometimes when they have to go through all these challenges, and yet you have a community, a society that does not appreciate what you do. So for me, number one, police reforms in terms of their welfare, making sure they live in an environment that is at least conducive for them to be able to do their work. Secondly, we need to ensure that institutions that are meant to offer oversight of the police are supported enough to be able to do that work. Institutions such as IPO, for example, we need to allow the DPP also to have the open and clear mandate to prosecute where they feel they need to do that. We need to allow institutions such as EACC to be able to do their work. So supporting institutions that are supposed to address these issues when they come about is extremely important. Thirdly, political will. We need time and again for those in authority. Hopefully, Professor Kithure Kindiki, if he's, passes the nomination, and if we also have the president, if we have the cabinet, permanent secretaries and others, to continuously send that message out that this is not a regime that will allow for police excesses to be carried out without due process, and that they will follow the law. I think for me, those three are key recommendations. All
right, so we've been having this conversation here in studio, but we're not alone. Of course, on social media, Kenyans have been saying a lot. Let's get to sample some of your feedback to get to hear what your thoughts are on the topic that we were discussing this morning.
And Oringe Waswa says the new order at the helm of DCI, coupled with the judicial independence, should be the much-needed antidote towards safeguarding the rights and freedoms of Kenyans. The criminal justice system must solely focus on crime eradication and nothing else.
All right, and Bob Otieno Owino, it is not disbandment, but rather recycling. Remember, it was Flying Squad to SSU, more so hoodwinking with names changing the units, but the same players.
And S. Ngashe says the disbandment of SSU by the president has been long overdue. The unit was created to do exactly what it's been doing. A commission of inquiry must be set up to unearth what has been happening, and all officers implicated must be punished.
And Engineer Lazaro, the government will regret a rash decision to disband police special squads to control hardcore criminals requires equal force. Even Uhuru administration disbanded the flying squad only to reconstitute it later into a different name.
And Godi Barasawere says the new order initiated at the DCI should be the total in caveats breath of fresh air. The cases surrounding extrajudicial killings, mysterious abductions and disappearance of innocent Kenyans must be resolved by the new leadership. #Daybreak.
All right, let's sample more. And it's Rev Harrison says, I think these extrajudicial and insecurities menaces should be dealt with once and for all. Thus, is to see an ending of the CS nominee. That is if the CS nominee walks the talk, I believe. That is what he meant.
And MC_Ruma says, let's hope after the disbandment of the dreaded SSU, cases of extrajudicial killings will come to an end. The president should form a commission of inquiry and all raw cops held accountable. Justice for the victims.
Thank you for your feedback. And still there is more. We appreciate all of you who took time to share your thoughts on Daybreak this particular morning. And we're just about to wrap up, but we'll give our guests a chance to have their final round of remarks. You've heard what even our viewers have shared on social media. I'll start with you, Hussein. What is your parting shot?
And briefly.
Briefly, yes. For me, the parting shot is, for Kenyans to get involved. This is our country. We need to support each other. We need to support the service. We need to support the government. We need to support everyone out there. So let all Kenyans participate. Let's have a national dialogue so that we can address these issues once and for all.
My parting shot is, let's have special agents, like if it is immigration, like the guy of Ethiopia who was kidnapped. It should have been the immigration. Let's have special agents in the immigration who takes people to court and stands with the case. Let's have special agents in the customs, in the tax collection departments, so that we eliminate the DCI's officers from running log to each and every government institution which has money. Because if you take them to the Ministry of Sports or Culture, they will not go there.
Okay.
But if you take them to where there is money like immigration, customs, border patrol, where money comes in. You go, for example, my parting shot. Let's have the issue of human trafficking stopped from all the way from Moyale up to South Coast, because it's done by police officers.
Thank you. Yes, Demas.
For me, it's a parting shot in form of a story. About 2 years ago, about 40 people were arrested and accused of smoking one stick of marijuana in Makadara area. And that prosecution was continuing until the judge really asked, are we supposed to believe that all these people were smoking this one thing that you've presented here? What I'm trying to say is that there's a lot to unravel within the criminal justice system. There are a lot of laws that are not really serving us. They're there to oppress the poor and the vulnerable in society. We need a review of many of these laws. We need to decriminalize certain things. We need to declassify certain things.
All right, thank you so much for creating time for us, gentlemen, and for all of you who created time to watch us this particular morning. As we end this, Ayub, extrajudicial killings, unexplained disappearances should be a thing of the past. These people are actually people's fathers, mothers, sisters, husbands, wives. You should just relate with the pain that they share each and every time when they come to call out for help to seek their kin, and only to find their dead bodies with so many questions and so little answers to explain how their loved ones ended up dying or never even to be traced until date. It's really unfortunate, and something should be done. If somebody is behind this, then that person should be brought to book as soon as yesterday.
Because we are a country based on the principles of rule of law and constitutionalism, a framework within which we all have to live, and therefore the law protects all Kenyans. Thank you so much for watching the broadcast. Of course, timely discussion, and a new DCI boss will be ascending to authority today. Ibrahim Mohammed will be the new DCI boss, taking over from George Kinoti, and he will be, of course, the long winding route ahead of him, SSU disbanded, and what happens next, sourced from within, and quite interesting journey that he has had as a servant of the people. And coming up next here on Daybreak is Health and Lifestyle Matters, Childhood Cancer, and Kenneth Wainaina will be here, oncology care specialist, to talk more about that matter in the next 1 hour. And we thank you for your time and company here on the broadcast. I am Ayub Abdikadir Abdi.
And my name is Safina Chengoma. Thank you for watching. Enjoy the rest of your viewing.